very warm welcome to today's seminar, Strategic Perspectives in Nonprofit Management, Shaping a Super Aging World. Live longer, live better. My name is Sophia, and I will be your MC for today. Incorporated on 21st March 2005, the Harvard Singapore Foundation sought to improve the management of nonprofit and non-governmental organizations. For the past 29 years, Harvard Singapore Foundation, through the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, has supported sector leaders to attain the strategic perspectives in nonprofit management at Harvard Business School. Today, for the first time in 20 years, we bring together sector leaders, practitioners, and partners across the nonprofit, healthcare, and public sectors to reflect on how we can better prepare for a super aging society, not just to help people live longer, but to live better. Before our lecture begins, it is my pleasure to invite our sponsor and co-founder of the Harvard Singapore Foundation, Mr. Anthony Teo, to say a few words. Mr. Teo was a former member of the Cabinet and advisor to the President's Office at Nanyang Technological University. Intrigued by the management of universities and the co-evolution of universities and cities, he served on the Kiosk World Universities Rankings, Asia Pacific Professional Leaders in Education Conference Academic Committee, and was Visiting Fellow at Cambridge University's Wolfson College. Mr. Teo was also an adjunct professor at the LKY SPP. Mr. Teo, please.
Well, good morning. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time, and this is a wonderful time because we are looking forward. I have only three things to say. The first thing I want to say is I want to thank Melissa Kui for being a strategic partner of Harvard Singapore Foundation. At the 8th anniversary of the Lee Kuan Yew School, we endowed a fund of $1 million for continuing education, CEO capacity building through this program at Harvard. So far, we have about 40. And Karen and Sam and Bunyao are the latest three, together with Yan Ting. The second point I want to make is it's good to think about the last 20, 21 years that Kinwai and I and Boon Hui started looking ahead. But our focus should be on the future. And the future has arrived because we have people like Yan Ting and Bunyao and Ang, the chairman of NKF. We founded this foundation amongst other things for capacity building, but the circumstance at that time was the crisis at NKF. And by that time, very few people would want to serve as executive or on the board. And we found the foundation under the patronship of ESM Gosok because we want to legitimize and promote capacity building, because this sector is absolutely important and government cannot do this function. Only all devotees like you and the 2,000 organizations can do it in a granular way all across Singapore. So to mark this 21st year, I want to make a presentation to Mr. Ang and Yan Ting with a poster that we did 15 years ago when we had the visiting professor from Kennedy School and Harvard Business School. And he told us about the example of foundation in India, Tata Foundation. Tata Foundation owns Tata Group, and they invest 15% of all their profits for social enterprise. The hospitals are run, the educational, the tea centers, and many other things. And on that note, I like my colleague Kinwai to present that to. Malaysia has talked about the city of good. I want to tell you about good work and good ethics, because we must develop all our people, and more people are in this age group, super aging. And as Shakespeare would say, by the seventh, sixth, or five circle, you go back to your younger days and you lose some of your teeth and some of your eyesight. But you must believe, and at Harvard, they taught me one thing, that everybody has a potential. And the program I did, they taught how you can learn. And the person who could learn was Helen Keller. And she was deaf, blind, and dumb. And they got her to live a full life. And she even went all the way to do a couple of PhDs. Okay? So the future is here, and we have to look at it as to how we can make out of it. I found in a passage that this is my guru, actually is Mihaly, the second guy. I don't know him, but I know his friends. And I told his friends to tell Mihaly that there's a guy from Singapore who thinks highly of him, because I cited his works in my universities and in my novels. Because that when a challenge meets your skill, then, because of your preparations and all, you then deal with issue of good work. Then you have the chance to experience work as good, as something that allows the full expression of what is best in us, something we experience as rewarding and enjoyable. Okay, it looks theoretical, but my grandson is now doing psychology. And he turns it around and he says, no, it's not when challenge meets your skill. It is when your skill meets the challenge. And that becomes what we are supposed to do. We are supposed to improve ourselves so that we can discharge our challenge in the way that we can be the hub for Southeast Asia that other people can look up to. So on that high note, I thank you very much.
We will begin the seminar with our first sharing. It is my pleasure to introduce Miss Melissa Kui, neighbor of Queenstown Kakis and former Chief Executive Officer of National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center, who will be sharing her insights on her topic, What Queenstown Kakis Taught Me About Designing a Super Age Singapore. Please join me in welcoming Miss Melissa Kui.
Hello, everyone. Good morning to you all. Oh, I'm so happy to see my dear friends and mentors and people who have championed me along the way. I actually was thinking about the topic today, and I thought, I'm going to wear my great grandmother's blouse. So I was like, we have to remember and give honor to them. When they asked us, what do you want to take from your grandmother, right? I mean, some people want jewelry or whatever, this kind of thing. Actually, I took a blouse and I took a plate because we used to go to her house a lot and we used to eat there, and so I remember the plates that we used to eat on. So I have the plate in my home. Anyway, okay, well, let's get started. What I thought I would just share with you today, too, is a little bit about what I've been doing the last 4 years. This is my house, actually, and this is 2021/2, as I was leaving NDPC. And for me, the biggest takeaway from COVID was that the people who were socially connected, who had relationships, people who had their back, who could look out for them, but whom they could also look out for, did well. And the people who were isolated did very poorly. And it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter where you came from, but that was actually the case. And I felt there was one charge on my heart, and that was, could I learn to be a good neighbor? Could I learn to be a good neighbor? And so I decided that I would move from my neighborhood, which I had lived in for many, many years, but I didn't know any neighbors. I know who and who lives here and who lives there and all this kind of stuff. But your gate opens, you leave, and then you come back and your gate closed, and that's pretty much it. And I actually really didn't know my neighbors. So I thought, actually the best thing to do is actually really get connected into a much thicker neighborhood, so I can actually knew my neighbors, because actually to love your neighbor, you at least have to know them, right? So that was the first start. And so this is my house, and I really thank God that I got the corner unit. And that's an art project that we started to do with the community, just to say, hi, we're here. Okay. And really for me, it was just this question of how do you make the city of good come alive at the ground level? We have all these big plans. You want to build digital infrastructure, want to build a program for companies, you want to do all these kinds of things at this very macro and sort of level. But actually what really happens when the rubber hits the road, like at the last mile? And that's maybe less about, structures and order and policies and things like that. And maybe it's a bit more of an organic process, a bit more of a garden in some ways. And that's where this concept of the Queenstown kakis, just friends who you do stuff with, came about. And, people always ask me, so how did you get started? I mean, there's this group of people that get together now pretty regularly. They're doing all these things, and then I just thought, hey, community leadership. Okay, this is like neighborhood leadership. What do you do? And I thought, and actually I realized it's not about plans. The most effective thing that I could do is actually go out and sweep my leaves. Outside of my house, I just sweep from the right to the left, then the left to the right, and then sweep a bit more left to the right, right to the left, and literally to do the most innocuous, boring, thing that you could possibly do to be visible in the community and so the joke became, at least for my family, that I'm the Harvard-educated road sweeper. They say, hey, you better study, because if you don't, you're going to become a road sweeper. I actually became a road sweeper. So I sweep the road outside my house. I sweep the pathway, the pedestrian section that's just adjacent to the house too, which is where the motorcycles park and the people from the polyclinic, and the mosque, kind of walk. It's the walkway. But that was the that was the thing. And I realized that, but actually what people really need is just to be aware of what is immediately around them. It's this idea of presence and proximity. And of course, one of the most vital things to do too is actually eat together, right? I mean, as like Singaporeans, you cannot do anything if you cannot eat together, So I really, again, I think this is divine providence that the first person who I managed to meet sweeping my leaves was a guy who was walking home very sian, like. But he, I think I was so curious looking that he looked me in the eye, and I looked him in the eye, and I was like, hi. And he said, I said, oh, do you live here? He said, yes. I live here. And I said, what do you do? And he's like, I am a chef. I'm like, I need a chef. I said, I really need a chef, and so Chef Saeed over there, and that's his sister, actually began. I said, hey, what do you cook? He's like, anything I can cook. I'm like, wow, best, So I was like, what do you like to cook, And then he said, oh, I can do any nasi padang. I said, hey, let's do nasi padang, So we started having pretty regular nasi padang kind of get together. And this was actually for we got to know each other well enough that he actually has been feeding the neighborhood in our gatherings. And actually he wanted to host his birthday. He asked me if he could host his birthday. I mean, this is over a number of years, and it's such a blessing when people can ask you for things, because it shows that they feel comfortable with you rather than just, or be so polite and so nice and things like that too. So, that's been a very big part of it. And that's my house on the side there, and it's right next door to Singapore's 3 oldest HDB flats on Stirling Road, and there's a 50-meter space there, which is this totally dead space that is between the terrace houses, and then the rental blocks, and nobody goes there. Literally, it's like, I mean, we have no void deck because it's first gen SIT flats and things like that, but nobody goes there. So we figured, okay, how can we find a way to activate this dead space, And so we started doing things like, hey, let's just roll out somebody's barbecue and go and make and people like always respond well to food, right? And then there's chef again. Music is another huge thing. You just sit down and over there too. Actually, it's interesting. I met my friend Kuan from Prison Fellowship, because actually the neighbors that we met there too are also, some of them are ex-offenders. But we try and also find out what can they do and what are they good at, And music was one pretty good one. And then he's sitting there playing the drum with one of the town council cleaners. We're like, he said, I can't. Yes, I'm working. I'm like, never mind, just come in for a little while. So if because you could tell he was like dancing, when he was hearing the music, you could tell he really enjoyed it. We thought, okay, come on, give yourself an opportunity to do that. And it really just is a chance to connect with anybody, old and small. And so this idea actually is a lot of older people. Obviously, Queenstown is, as you all know, and I think Leng Leng will share too, is already a super aged kind of neighborhood, right? But I think what's also vital in this context too is having the connection with younger people and having a very strong kind of like intergenerational connectivity, which means you have to be okay with mess, you have to be okay with a bit of noise and all of those kinds of other things. But I should say too that we started on a $5,000 budget because we won accidentally this Design Singapore Lovable Neighborhoods Bootcamp Challenge or something like that. It took us like 2 years to spend it. And after 2 years, we cannot spend it because everybody is just bringing stuff and we don't need the money. And I was thinking, this is insane, and so many other places you're like scrambling for funds and this and that and everything else, right? But actually people, hey, no, why do it? And like the train that was built over there, somebody rescued this bale of cardboard. It's the one when they do renovation, right? You put it all out. Somebody left it there and they're discarding it. And they say, hey, no, let's take it. And then they start building stuff out of it. So you can literally think of like how to do things on like a really shoestring budget until eventually we decided we're going to buy NTUC vouchers because really paise, we cannot keep this thing open so long. Anyway, so day and night, also accommodating shift work. Because typically we'll do things on a Saturday morning, but if you're a shift worker, Saturday morning is a lousy time. So we're trying to find ways and means to do things in that. And, the one thing we realized too is the power of just like the boring and the mundane. It's just the people that you see around you every day. It's things like your immediate neighbors. And literally, like for example, the gentleman there with the bicycle, he's trying to fix my bike. I was saying, hey, how do I change the basket on the front of the bike? So asking him to help me to do that. And he's somebody that I met because every single day at 6 o'clock he will do 20 rounds of the car park. He'll just sit on his bike and do 20 rounds of the car park. And if it were not, and the first few times, he's kind of like not looking at me, very intentionally not making eye contact. But I mean, how many times? You're doing it 20 times. You're doing it every single day. At some point you're going to like make eye contact and say hello, right? So eventually he's now helping me with my with my bicycle. The other young man who's out there too is he's intellectually disabled, and actually this is another consideration that I have thinking about the future and super age. He's in his 30s now, but in 30 years he'll be 60, and he's the only child of his parents. One parent is already disabled. The mother is a cleaner who's the caregiver / breadwinner / everything else. Who's the woman in the middle who, despite all of this, has such a joyful smile on her face, and she's part of the brigade. I mean, she'll always come and she's there. People are fixing something. There's like raining, so she decided to grab the umbrella. It's really just all the smallest things in the everyday that really create the density of the social network that we have that's there. This is also one of my neighbors too, who is often very grumpy in this, but we invited her for National Day to come down to the kopitiam to share stories from residents in the neighborhood. Rebecca Magnan at University of Glasgow actually just came out with a paper, I think it's just like this last week or so, that talks about the the power of connecting people and place, and the importance of the felt experiences in historic neighborhoods. And actually, when people feel a sense of pride in like your neighborhood. I mean, Queenstown pride will be different from Toa Payoh pride, will be different from, Siglap pride or whatever, it's okay, But I think that sense of like where you are, and actually for her, we asked her, so can you help share some, we call them Sterling stories because we live on Sterling Road, about what life was like when you moved in as a secondary school student, into the neighborhood. Tell us a bit about that. And everyone has a role in that sense too. So, I mean, yeah. This essentially is a similar point. I think you all are quite aware of the positive impacts on mental health, on creating a sense of purpose and identity, and stronger communities. And celebrations are always, for us, like one of the most important things to find a way to celebrate anything all the time. And that's why I think about it as a sort of quiet care network. It's not something very like, noted or anything like that. But when you can find ways that people can contribute. So we created something called the Kakis Clinic. So then there's a couple other things there. So younger people who have these kinds of skills will make posters. Older people can, teach you how to fix your bicycle, or we'll teach you, we'll fix your jewelry. Like the aunties will come, my chain got broken, So then other people in the neighborhood. So people will bring their skills, whatever they happen to be. And it's a so-called free clinic. The other thing that's interesting about this Kaki clinic, the Kampong market that's there too, is it's zero money. So you kind of equalize, because some people don't have a lot of cash, right? But then maybe you got time, maybe you got skills, things like that too. And actually when we say, hey, how to pay, because people will literally bring their dry laksa or bring their, their misoto or whatever it is to kind of like, to share. And they're like, oh, cannot pay. How to pay? Oh, then we just came up with this thing, which was you pay in smiles and chit-chat. Can you do that? Pay in smiles and chit-chat. So that way, the exchange is I give you something, just talk to me, just have an opportunity to connect. So then a lot of recycling and things like that too. So things don't always have to be new, but they can be really pre-loved. And that's Wei Kyung. We've had people without permission like create a playground in that dead space actually too. So, we got slides. Somebody was like, hey, I found carousel slides for free. I was like, hey, go and get. and those have all been located there too. So lots of, I think maybe one point just to highlight too, everybody who is in this room is a bridge. And who can be a bridge, because you are a bridge to the wider world. You are a bridge to new ideas. You are a bridge to different people and things like that too. And the wonderful thing was I was so inspired by Wei Kyung's the young boys care of. He's literally our local ambassador. He'll always look out for older people, check in on the people with dementia. I mean, he does this voluntarily. That I shared his story with Amanda Chong. And we started making some videos, about them. And it's this thing called Walk With You. So it's under Walk With You on Instagram if you want to take a look. But then we found out that Amanda and his mother, Achu, share the same birthday. And to me, it was just such a poignant moment to be able to celebrate both of their birthdays actually together. So I think in conclusion, I think, we think about all of these neighbors and the new leases of life that they can have when they connect with a new community. This was Chef, who initially was, the guy, he was recently sort of like divorced. He lost his home, he was unemployed during COVID, really just trying to get his life back in order. And I think just building up his identity, and his dignity as our neighborhood chef in some ways was a really important part of getting him back on track. And now he also is a sort of ambassador, sort of sharing about the importance of actually building social relationships at the last mile too. And I just do want to say that it is not about Queenstown. This just happens to be where one person is. It's not. I tried to make it intentionally not sophisticated, not difficult to do, not high budget, not so clever, but actually things that are just so simple and regular and doable. Because anybody can do it. Start where you live, and just find that one thing. Is it just share a meal with somebody and take a bit of time to notice who's doing what on a regular basis, and shift our question from how do we help, to how do we create stronger relationships of mutual support and mutual care. And I think, I know it says Singapore won't be saved by policy alone, but actually the bigger point here is relax. Everybody, with all of these things too, we always see these issues as being such a huge challenge, like all kind of dependency burden and silver tsunami and all these kind of other things too. But I think at the same time, we have to realize that actually we are the people we've been waiting for. That if this is going to be addressed effectively, then it really begins with us. It begins with what we decide to do, every day, with the people around us and the choices that we make. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kui, for enlightening responses. We will now accept questions from the audience. Please raise your hand if you have any questions for Ms. Melissa Kui.
Sorry if I went over time, but no bad questions. No. Yep. Kani, of course.
Let me comment.
Oh, please.
I'm Kanwaljit Soin, and I've known, thank you, I'm Kanwaljit Soin, and I've known Melissa since she was 18. She's one of my favorite young people. I loved your talk, but I just wanted to emphasize that social connection is the most important thing in life. In Harvard, since this is a Harvard they did the longest Harvard adult development study for 80 years, in which they followed people who were in Harvard and people who lived on the poorer side of the town, the east side, I think. And they have been following these two groups for 80 years. And what contributes to living longer, living better, is not your diet, not your exercise, not your wealth, not your status, but the number of social and deep connections that you make. So you are proving the Harvard Adult Development Study was right all over again. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dr. Sembibi. I also volunteer with Touch Community Services Senior Center. And I run actually nutrition class for them, stretch band exercise, and Chinese brush painting. And it was really encouraging. And these are seniors from one room flat in Sembawang under Minister Ong Ye Kung. And it was very encouraging when you see them making connections and they're suddenly so happy. And even though they are in wheelchair, but they come to the center, And also, I think one of the aspect, that I feel is very important is actually their health, because from low-income families and with very low educational background, they're really very unaware of nutrition, all that.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking, because I know your area quite well, Queenstown, because I also teach near there. And they're building this like health hub in Queenstown. Have you thought of connecting your group with, the health activities that going on?
Yeah.
And I believe, I went for the opening, there's a center and
Village one or the Margaret Drive?
Margaret Drive one where I think it's under NUH or something like that.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I know they're running some kind of health activities.
Yeah, actually, that's such a good point. In fact, one of the big things we always say too is let's have those breakfasts where we get people together, the different partners doing what and what, and again, just eat. Yeah, try and eat healthy things. In fact, so the chef, I always tell him too, I say, hey, I love your Malay food, but can we do less oil? So we found a new way to cook this sambal eggplant, okay, which is usually soaked in oil, right? You boil it first. Then you make the sauce separately, and then you just at the end you mix, and it actually tastes great. And you do it with almost no oil, So I challenge him. I say, can you do all of these things, but you just reduce the sugar, you reduce the salt, you reduce the oil, and I'm like, okay, make sure it tastes still okay, right? But yeah. So, but it's I think on this point of nutrition vital. Because honestly, I see people coming home and they've got big bags of instant noodles, and I'm thinking, oh my god, it's just so awful. And then I have a neighbor who doesn't even drink water; he only drinks beer, and I'm just thinking, oh, this is so bad. I mean, it's really it's hard, but you gotta anyway. You start one thing at a time. But getting connected with the other groups very, very important. Actually, this Saturday we are meeting. If anybody wants to come, just let me know. This group of tweens. They're about 10, 11, 12 years old, and they do community patrolling in their rental blocks. And one of the moms runs the community fridge. But the kids actually, as part of their after school activity, put on these vests and have walkie-talkies and things like that. And they go around and they just check which section is dirty lah, who needs help lah, all this kind of stuff, right? And I invited them to come down because I want you to come and inspire and also share with some of my neighbors too. Could we do something like that in the neighborhood? I think connecting with all of these groups is so vital. Yeah. And I always prefer to do it over a meal than in a meeting room. So okay.
Next, we will hear from Dr. Christopher Lian, Senior Consultant with the Department of Geriatric Medicine at Changi General Hospital, who will be sharing his perspectives on his topic, Longevity 2.0, how we actually live longer. Please welcome Dr. Christopher Lian.
Thanks very much. Melissa, I just loved your talk. I am inspired every time I listen to you speak. And I guess now, what listening to Melissa said to me is that, so what's next? And what's next from my lens and my world? I'm a hospital-based geriatrician, which means I see old people, yeah, and kind of I was just having a conversation with Anthony just before tea, and this is kind of the William Shakespeare approach towards aging, right? It's everything all at once, or one at a time, or randomly, not sequentially, right? When it hits us, it hits us, and we all kind of want to, or there's a lot of information and a lot of inspiration that perhaps this is not the way to age. So, and I guess we know this, yeah, the Blue Planet series, and if we watch all the series, Singapore gets mentioned together with Okinawa and Costa Rica, and kind of the themes are kind of interesting, right? Downshift meaning do less. Purpose, wake up feeling energized. Plants and meat is bad. Oh dear, how am I going to tell my kids that? It's not just eat your vegetables, but vegetables give life. Yeah. Wine at 5, maybe not the most politically correct or culturally sensitive in a multicultural society, but there are antioxidants and flavonoids in our beverages that can help. Family first, and that goes to not just our nuclear family, right, but our neighborhood. The 80% rule, meaning don't eat until you are too full, because gluttony is not just bad manners; it's actually bad for health. Yeah, and move. 活到老，摇到老, right? Yeah. So move till you're old, right? And it's not just exercise; just keep moving. Right tribe, surrounding yourself with people that you can connect with, and a sense of belonging. Yeah. So this is really a reprise of what Melissa's just shared, isn't it? So, but yet when we think about longevity, we kind of look at science and we ask ourselves, what did science show us? Life expectancy wasn't very long. even though in biblical times you see people kind of, they talk about people living to 150, but most people didn't. Yeah. And it's only with water and sanitation and vaccination that things began to change. So, and then with antibiotics, people began to not die from their infections. So suddenly, and I use the word suddenly, metaphorically as well, like suddenly in the last 100+ years, life expectancy has gone up and up and up and up. And this is a mathematical model by Peter Fetishev, who's a group of Russian mathematicians who are actually based in Singapore at the moment. And looking at all the databases that we have, and looking at if things go well according to all these data patterns, we think that maybe more and more people can live to about 150 years old. So that's what the mathematics says, right? And of course, the question is, what does the science say? Actually, the science always there's a lag between the science and reality, isn't it? This is WHO's approach towards aging, and they look at life kind of roughly like, the fit stage where you are high, full of capacity, and when you are beginning to lose, we call it intrinsic capacity, right? That's all those of us who understand frailty understand this concept. When we begin to lose intrinsic capacity, that's where we begin to find impairments that accumulate. And then the last phase, kind of where the significant loss of function, that's when what everybody wants to avoid. We don't want to just live longer and be so full of pain and suffering. That is what we all are afraid of, right? And so if you look at the WHO framework, they talk about mechanisms to reverse this in terms of health services, long-term support, and the environment, which we hear a little bit about after this, right? And this is Singapore's response. This is the MOH guidelines, MOH strategy for frailty. So really a lot of the effort is, if you look at the arrows, to try to reverse this with health systems and with environmental networks and environmental initiatives to try to change some of these this decline. And because when we think about action, we also think about buckets, right? And so in our bucketed sort of way, we kind of look at all this nutrition, mobility, vision, hearing, cognition, mood, continence, caregiving, social support. So this is again the many WHO documents which are being spread across the world to try to mobilize people around this way of looking at aging. But it doesn't change the fact that we acquire cumulative deficits as we age. And this is one way of looking at frailty, which is a state from robustness to frailty to the terminal stages of life. And this is the work of Professor Ken Rockwood and his colleagues in Canada. But there is also an archetype, a phenotype, which is really Linda Fried's work, and looking at the dimensions of frailty. If you have two or more of these features, you can say maybe you are frail. If you have one or two, maybe pre-frail, right? So when the dimensions are weakness, slowness, feeling tired, not doing much unintentional weight loss. So and I think a lot of us who are in our 60s, we begin to feel the effects of being frail, right? Our muscles get a little bit more weak, and we get a bit more slow. There's a lot of aches and pains, and injury doesn't seem to go away. And there's therefore this signs of frailty, of sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle mass and strength, which really is the replacement of muscle with fat, and the progressive weakness of muscle groups and muscle resilience. So when you exercise as a young person, you exercise a little bit, you get a bit of bulk, a bit of strength, you feel very shook, right? But when you're old, you go to the gym, you try to do what YouTube video says, and then the next day you get aches and pains, and you say, oh yeah, delayed onset muscle weakness symptoms, right? DOMS, good but then after 3 days it doesn't go away, And you go to the gym and you try again and the pain gets worse. And you ask yourself, oh no, am I past my sell-by date? Is my situation not reversible? Yeah. And that's the situations that there are many partners in day rehab centers here, right? And how many times have we tried to push our older person a little bit more, and the relatives come, 哎，你们昨天做什么？我妈爸回来痛得要命啊！你们不要这样勉强了，可以吗？ Right? Right? Don't push my older father or mother. Don't torture them with your exercise. Right? So that's the tension, right, of growing old and facing our frailty and coming to terms with our sarcopenia. Just looking at the room, maybe not so many of us are that old yet, right? So maybe we don't know what we don't know. But then when you are asked to give a talk like Longevity 2.0, we've got to ask ourselves, what is happening in the scientific world? And actually we are confronting a cataclysmic point of time. Things are so explosive. And this is the cover of Cell 2013, where they first describe the hallmarks of aging, looking at the cell level of how cells communicate, the genes, the telomere. The telomere is very interesting. The telomere is like this protection at the end of your genes, right? And if you keep the telomeres, your genes become very healthy. But as you get a bit older, your telomeres drop off. So it's almost like you lose your protection, and the gene itself become a little bit more brittle and fragile. So we all want to keep our telomeres healthy, right? So there's a whole lot of science in that. Then epigenetics is really what the environment does to your genes. The loss of and how the genes and the environment translate to how you make proteins, because proteins is actually what the architecture of your body. Then how you manage what you eat, the various bits of your mitochondria, how your cell goes to sleep and renew itself or get destroyed or proliferate uncontrollably, and how your original cells, the stem cells, flow, right? So, and this is the update 10 years down the line, right? Looking at the various components of understanding cell damage, understanding cell pausing, and how the body repairs itself, and how it doesn't. So this is at the level of the cell, how all these things translate. And we can begin to measure some of these elements more and more. We can begin to look at different signals and chemicals, and we can look at our biological age, which is really the whole space of our biological clock. And this slide just summarizes all the research that's being done in the space. And it basically, this slide is actually work done by my colleague Fong Sheng, one of the young geriatricians now in Ng Teng Fong, and he shows that actually there are different ways to shift the clock. You can do things that actually makes the clock more healthy, and there are factors that make the clock less healthy, right? And these are the dimensions that are being studied. We now know that inflammation is bad. And if you remember, for those of us who understand TCM, we always talk about 热气, right? Yeah, we also talk about heatiness. This is heaty. And we always think, these China, grandmother, what do they know? But there is a lot of wisdom in 5,000 years of understanding that heat is problematic if it's not managed. And inflammaging is really the image of inflammation. And all this is becoming something that we can study. Yeah. And just beyond the chemical signatures of what's happening in the body, it's also what's happening at the cell level. And the energy powerhouse of the cell is this thing called the mitochondria. And mitochondrial function is something that is extensively studied. And of course, beyond the cells is how things connect, right? And things connect through our blood. And our blood goes to different places through our blood vessels. So, and lining our blood vessels is the endothelium. And endothelial function is what makes us healthy or not so healthy. And they're the things that carry our signals from our heart to our eyes to our skin to our senses. And actually the endothelium is everything. But how our body interacts with the entire world is through our stomach and our gut, because we are what we eat. And the balance between the chemicals and the bacteria in our gut, this whole space of the microbiome, and how it then interfaces with our gut endothelium and our gut epithelium, right, which is the lining of cells, affects how we age as well. And really these show you all the signs that go through all the different layers of the spaces that connect the inside and the outside and our body. So in longevity medicine, we're really talking about at the DNA level, at how the DNA messaging goes on to the RNA and how it translates to the protein and the chemicals that circulate around the body. And that's, in summary, what we know. But in closing, I want to just bring us to 2 or 3 books that we can read, right? I mean, we all know David Sinclair's book, and there is a website that David Sinclair has all his interviews, his YouTube videos. And it is extremely interesting because, it basically tells you that there are 3 points. He basically summarizes 3 points. That there is, the aging is probably reversible. Lifestyle interventions actually are key. And there are 4 dimensions that can't eat so much. Intermittent fasting has got its benefits. Cold, hot exposure, saunas and the ice bath, high intensity exercises, and it's got to be slightly stressful, because if it's not stressful enough, your body is actually not going to react and respond. And of course, plant-based diet. And the future, of course, is what we just covered. Really, the signs of the future. It's that there are 3 things to remember in this slide. That there is this thing called mTOR. mTOR, where is it? mTOR is this mechanism of rapamycin. And rapamycin is this interesting antimicrobial substance that's found in the soil. So remember the old perspectives, right? Oh, you must be grounded, must have grounding, must touch the soil. Young people must run barefooted. Actually, there is some science behind it that we're beginning to know. Not too much, not too little, but just right. And then, of course, the whole body has a whole system of adenosine monophosphate AMP, and the enzyme that actually makes it work. And there are all these connectors, the sirtuins, that actually all have to be balanced in order to give us a long, comfortable life. Yeah. So I won't talk about too much about this, but you can go and look at David Sinclair's website. It talks about the different drugs that have been tried to mimic this longevity cascade. And metformin, we all talked about metformin, and about metformin as the one thing that is good for diabetics, but it's also good for non-diabetics, right? And this is the other book I would propose. It talks about 2 main things. That increasingly we want medicine that's personalized, predictive, preventative, and participatory, the 4 Ps. But we are also looking from sickness to wellness, and that's going to be the future. And these are the people in NUS that are doing the work. So if you really want to talk to them, you can go and talk to them about how you can bring the science to the Active Aging Center. But it's not so easy, And so in closing, I would like to maybe ask ourselves, so what now? The science is in the lab. It may be available for the wealthy, and the professors in the US actually consult to several wellness clinics, and you can get all the research that they're doing delivered to you in a personalized way for a fee. But what do we know? What can we say to each other? Right, eating less is better. Exercise. Actually, exercise is important, and it's got to have a certain amount of endurance training. And look at everybody in front of you. Think in terms of yardsticks, right? The ones that can exercise less than 2 minutes is a different group. People that can do 2 to 10 minutes are a different group. Those who can work manage 10 to 20 minutes is a different group. And those who can do more than 20 minutes, perhaps that's a different perspective. And I think everybody in this room should be at the more than 20-minute group, in which case we work on specific elements of strength building and flexibility training and balance training, so to keep us flexible, connected, and able, right? So exercise is medicine. Engage, we don't need to say it. Environment, we will hear next in the next talk. Early detection, early interventions. But don't forget, we live in Asia, and the East is unique. And when we look, and the whole thing about being unique is that everybody is unique, and there's no one size fits all. So not only must we think unique, we must also embrace diversity, because that is really how we bring forth all our understanding so that we can work together, live together, be together. So we're looking increasingly at integrative medicine, integrative health. This is the Duke the Duke model in the US. But when you look at something like that, what comes out to you? You could almost layer in the TCM models of health into this, right? The multiple dimensions, and indeed, if you go to Beijing, you go to so the big universities in China, they are developing curriculums in integrative medicine, and really, this is in Zhaobao, right? Just to remind us that even in Singapore, this is the way we hope to go. So I come back to this original slide, right? How do we live to 100, and what does it mean to live to 100? And how do we start doing that now rather than in the future? Okay, that's me. So questions?
Thank you, Dr. Lin, for your valuable sharing. We would now like to welcome questions from the audience. Any questions for Dr. Lin? Okay, fast.
It's not a question, it's a word from the sponsor. Besides endowing the Lee Kuan Yew School, we endowed $1 million at SUSS. And there is a program for Masters in Gerontology, which originally was together with USC, which is a very good gerontology school. And the scholarship is quite generous. So we've seen some of the graduates, because now education is a little bit more pricey. Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you so much for your talk. I just want to again mention the nutrition class that I run for seniors. And one of the topics that I cover is the importance of reduced salt. And when you eat out in Singapore, actually the salt level is way too high. And one time when I opened up the floor for question, one senior stood up and she looked very offended. She says that when she cooked for her son, the son complained that her food is very bland, and she was very hurt. And then that dawned upon me that for the seniors of that generation, that how important their self-esteem is tied to the food that they cook for the family. So family feedback is really important to them. And so the question is, how do you get by or get past this psychological barrier, that it's not just about salt, but it's tied to their self-esteem. You know what I mean?
I mean, the short answer to the long question is really that there is no one answer, isn't it? And taste is not just about salt and sugar and MSG, right? Taste is complex. Taste is an experience. Taste is texture, right? So there are many ways of bringing to life the beauty of food. And perhaps when we forget that things are beautiful, things can be beautiful, we approach things like a one-trick donkey. Oh, not tasty now. Put some masala. And that kind of maybe makes things a bit simplistic. Yeah. And how do you open this conversation to one where it's a dialogue? I guess is the real answer that we are looking for, isn't it?
Thank you, Prof. Lin. My name is Yen from NKF. I love Melissa in your talk, and I just wonder, in your busy lifestyle, what are some of the practices that you can share with us, if you don't mind? Because all of us are busy, but how do you, I can see you're fit from the outside at least. Yeah. From the outside at least. We don't know what's inside, right? We all know that. So I just wanted, whether you could share with us, how do you do as a daily practice? I mean, that would inspire me as much as Melissa has inspired me to start my own kampong in my own district, Yeah.
I'm human, right? So I have an aspiration execution disconnect every single day, right? Right, but but before I would love to run every day if I can, but I'm not disciplined enough, and maybe I don't love myself enough to do that, right? But before this morning, I did come for a run this morning because I knew it was important, and I knew that the exercise would. It's not just the endorphins, because after preparing for this talk, I knew I had to stress my endothelium a little bit, right? and in order to keep it regenerated, I got to activate the cells so that my body can be a bit more connected. So I know it's good for me. How do I do it every day? And how do I do it not for myself, but so that others could also benefit? I think that's the key, right? If you live for yourself, it's very lonely. But we do a lot of things on our own, and that's what makes it so hard. So when you asked me how are the kids, I said my kids are quite young. I got married quite late, so I'm still at the growling phase of parenting, right? So growling at the kids is not very fun, right? And it takes a lot of energy out of you. So how do you not do that? How do you recharge, recenter? And no man's an island, right? We with our spouse, we reconnect and we recenter. God gave us a helper for a reason, right? And then our community, and our friends and so on. So I think that it does come back to the key message behind Melissa's talk. Are we permitted to take one more question? Yeah.
Hello, Doctor. I'm Satvik. Thank you for the talk. Just a quick question. You mentioned some parallels between TCM concepts like heatiness and inflammaging. So when clinicians give guidance to their patients, how do you weigh TCM remedies or other traditional remedies when looking at giving advice to patients, or how do you compare them, weigh them against clinical advice that is backed by more evidence or Western research?
I think the short answer is, first, do no harm. Right, and secondly, there are many things we don't know. So when people ask me about TCM, I try to listen to what the question is rather than give an answer. And sometimes by helping our patients reframe the question, they already know what is next. And maybe that is really how we should approach this space of complexity. Yeah. And it comes back to our education system, isn't it? If we just keep forcing our kids to memorize answers, they forget to ask how to ask questions. And we know that that's far more important than actually having a book of ready answers.
Thanks. Thank you very much for your talk. When I was practicing, I noticed that there was a tension when I looked after older people between filial piety. The children all wanted to protect the older person, and the older person wants to become more autonomous and more independent. So I noticed this tension. And the younger people no, you must rest, Mom. You cannot go out. You will fall down. Well, the older person, needs some purpose. They want a sense that I'm still able to do things myself. So how do we reconcile this autonomy versus protection dilemma?
You're putting into the center of the room a day in my anguish in clinical practice, right? I face this every day. And older people need agency, but they're not. Agency in Singapore politics, somehow it doesn't go very well together, right? And so we need to reframe agency. And unfortunately, the foreign domestic worker is a very is not a very proactive approach towards giving older people agency, right? And domestic workers are hired to protect and limit danger. So how can we be a bit more open to risk, open to danger, open to exploration, open to tensions that are creative? Yeah. So I think it's a whole of society question, And which is why the next talk is so important, because really how we design spaces may sometimes change how we live and how we function and how we interact.
Hi, Dr. Lin. This is Melody, staff of LKY. So I have questions for you. You have this 6E, right? But I'm trying to reconcile that a lot of seniors told me the last 10 or 20 years, they were fall sick. They couldn't do anything, if despite that they have done all this 6E that you have recommended. So how would you recommend those seniors telling me that, hey, my last 10 or 20 years, I will be very sick? Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a very difficult conversation, and it's a different conversation to healthy longevity, right? So managing illness and disability and frailty is very complicated, but it comes back to one thing. Actually, rehabilitation is everything, and our system is not geared towards optimizing rehabilitation. Very often, when things are difficult, we'll say no rehab potential lah. Back to baseline. What's baseline? Maintenance group. This one, right. So, which is really not very much, right? So we do a lot. We spend a lot of time not doing very much. So there's a lot of missed opportunity in this space, and I think that's probably the first conversation we have to work on together, because this is a non-profit space. So my strategic non-profit management question is, how do we begin to turn that paradigm so that every point of contact is an opportunity for activation, right? So rehabilitation only works if it happens all the time, not just once a week at the physiotherapist.
Hi, I'm Kuan from Prison Fellowship. Dr. Lin, thank you for sharing all these very big scientific terms that you've shared with us today. So to me, I think the real issue is how do we connect the medical profession with the layman to motivate them to do some of these changes they have to encounter in terms of their health. So maybe I can share my personal experience. So I started taking some statin about a year and a half ago. That scared the living daylights out of me, right? So I said, how do we reduce this? The doctor assured me at the polyclinic, if you improve your blood test, you can reduce the dosage, right? So I was on 20 mg of simvastatin for about a year and a half. So, started to exercise more, watch my diet more. And as time progresses, my last visit just 2 days ago, it was, the markers have shown that I can actually reduce the simvastatin down to 10 mg. So that's way, great. We're moving in the right direction. But the key thing to me was actually the doctor, explaining to me what is the target, LDL that I should be aiming for, what's the target triglyceride that I should be aiming for, as opposed to giving me a range, and then to me, with a target, I can then, productively work towards that goal. And maybe for some of the conversations that we have with the lay people and the elderly is that, there's a target that we want to try to help you to set to show that there's an improvement in your health, right? And that conversation could be a lot easier for them to internalize and understand, as opposed to this is the range that you're supposed to be in, and it confuses them as to where, what else they can do to improve their health. I think the main thing is to engender some ownership on their part as well to improve their health. Yeah.
My 2-second or 1 minute answer to that is that actually, how long is our clinic consult? How much are you willing to pay for how long of a clinic consult, right? And most of our clinic consults are pitched at the 10-minute mark. So in a 10-minute clinic consult, of which I have to spend 3 to 5 minutes documenting, what can I say in 5 minutes that you don't already know, or you shouldn't already know if you just interacted with ChatGPT a little bit more before you came into the consult room, right? Yeah. So do you need me to tell you stuff that you can find out yourself? But I think this is going to be the future of medicine. Yeah, that a lot of these things, which are really bottom of the license in most of our practice, will no longer feature in the consult room. That we will be able to personalize our genomics, our epigenetics, our biochemistry, and the right antihypertensive and statin for us. and the right dose of exercise. It will all be computed, and we will see it in our lifetime. Yeah. But that's not the question, right? The question is, how do we do things differently now? And I think that's a conversation really, that we could take forward. And I was just saying, an NKF, right? People come for dialysis 3 times a week. That's 3 hours of opportunity 3 times a week to do things differently. Right? But we've talked about this for the last 15 years. How do you really make a change? It's not easy, but it's possible. And I think that's where some of these conversations can begin. Yeah.
More question in the back.
Hey, Prof. Cheng, good morning. This is Michael from Reach Community Services. I couldn't help but notice, right, if you look at the Blue Zone project, there's power of 9. More than half of it is actually social, right? Downshift, purpose, wine at 5, I'm doing that every day, right? So 80% rules, right tribe in your own faith. More than 50% are social. So as a medical professional, would you like to lend your thoughts with regards to health or social health integration, and what is CGH doing and what are you doing? Yeah.
We are full of cells, but we are also beings that are trying to make meaning of life, right? So, and what's not in any of the slides is mental health, right? And actually, many of us are lonely, lost, angry with ourselves, right? Who's there to listen to us with our anguish, with living our contradictions, right? Say something to my wife, but thinking something else in my mind. How many of us do that? And there's no space for these authentic conversations, right? So I think really the answer is we need authenticity in our social connections. We need to help ourselves be real. And then you can add on the medicines onto it. Then all this makes sense. If you just do all of the bits that tick the boxes, I don't think you'll go very far. Which is why when we learn from Okinawa and Costa Rica, when I watch the snippet, they said the thing about Costa Rica is they have lots of sex. Yeah. Whoa! How am I going to share that in a lecture, right? Yeah. So I mean, but those are facets of humor to make us think about how we need to live our lives.
It is now my pleasure to introduce our third speaker, Associate Professor Tang Leng Leng from the Department of Japanese Studies at the National University of Singapore. Today, she will share her insights on her topic, the longevity lifestyle, designing cities, work, and purpose for 100-year lives. Please join me in welcoming Associate Prof. Tang Leng Leng.
Hello, it's very nice to be here and meet old faces, some of the friends that we have not met for a long time as well. So I want to thank Anthony really for inviting me to give a talk. It's and the topic they suggest is great, but it's so big. I had a hard time trying to see how to focus it. Yeah, so I have narrowed it down to really talk about my insights from Japan, looking at longevity lifestyle for 100-year life. So it's really nice that Christopher just now talked about Okinawa, because that's something that we always kind of allude to, right? When we talk about Blue Zone and talking about Japan and talking about how healthy the diet is and so forth. Let me give some background of myself so that you can understand where this Japan talk comes from. So I'm from Japanese Studies, and I'm also with the Purposeful Longevity Workstream at Health District at Queenstown. So I think when we first visited the outside of Melissa's house, she just bought the place and said, this is going to be the community that I want to build. And it's so nice to see it happening so wonderfully. And so I have, as an anthropologist, I've done research in different parts of Japan. I stayed for 1.5 years in Okinawa and then in Tokyo, in Kobe. And I also look at the Japanese, older Japanese who retired and then moved to Southeast Asia, moved to Australia. So you can actually sense kind of, my sense of, it's really about ikigai that I'm interested in. Why I studied about aging is because in the 1980s, when I was a university student, my grandfather had to go to nursing home because the space at home was, couldn't negotiate the steps and all. And that was where I realized that, well, there was aging issues in Singapore, visiting nursing homes so regularly. But in the 1980s, nobody cared about aging in Singapore, right? We were up and coming. We're such a youthful society. But as a Japanese studies major, I studied about Japanese society. So I know that Japan became an aging society. Aging society is where your population reaches 7% of 65 years and above. So Japan became an aging society back in 1970. Okay, so Singapore and Japan used to be 30 years apart in the aging rate. But you know how fast Singapore is catching up, right? So if you look at the life expectancy in Japan, I became interested in Japan about mid-1980s, 1990. Everybody was talking about life at 80 years old at that time for Japan. So now it's about life at 100. But if you look at Singapore and Japan's comparison, right, 1950, life expectancy was about 54, in Japan was 59. And we actually, when we compare until 2024, it's about 30 years of increase extra on the average for Singapore, whereas in Japan is about 25.6 years. So we are actually aging much more faster. And that's why there's so much talk in Singapore about, the super aged society as well that we're getting into this year. So in the year 2025, you look at the Japan and Singapore, the average is just 85 versus average of 84. So that's really why we are seeing much more older people now in Singapore. And if you look at 2010, the year 2010, life expectancy is going to be more than 95, so 94 years for Japan and 92.7 for Singapore. So that's the background of why we are all talking about 100-year life, right? So one of the results of longevity is you're going to have more people crossing the age of over 100. So this lady on the right-hand side is 114 years old, said to be the oldest person on earth. And this lady below is my friend's grandmother, who this picture was taken when she was 100 years old. She passed away, I think, shortly, 102 or so. But at 90, she started to learn calligraphy. At 100, she started to learn knitting. So it's very inspiring that you can learn at any age, wherever age you are, or you may be on a wheelchair, but you can still learn. Okay, so in 2017, Prime Minister Abe set up this office to formulate plans for 100-year life in Japan. So this was a picture where, this signboard was taken up, and they invited people who are 80s, 90s, and active to come and share about how a society should be like in 100 years, for 100 years. So Masako Wakamiya, some of you might have met her in Singapore. She came to Singapore a few times, and quite often, I think, quite close with the SUSS group. Wakamiya was one of those who were being invited to join this office project. And she is well known as an app developer at age 81. She started to learn about, digital technology and did an app. So she's really the icon of lifelong learning in Japan and for all of us as well. Okay, so when we talk about when we talk about Japan, blue zone, Okinawa is like, it always come out. I had a good opportunity. I was fortunate to have a chance to live in Okinawa. Of course, before I just finished my I just finished my undergrad, and then there was a scholarship, and my department say, why don't you take it out and go Okinawa? It's like, 1980s, Okinawa is somewhere that you barely hear of. You will go Japan to travel, you will go Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto. You wouldn't go Okinawa. So I say, maybe it's good. Otherwise, I may not go there at all in my life. So living there gave me, it was interesting that whenever I meet older people, they always like to talk about what is their ikigai. See, my ikigai is doing this, doing that. And I became interested in the word ikigai because I hear so much about it. And so when I had a chance to do a master's thesis in my own department, after that, I did a thesis looking at ikigai of the older people in Okinawa. And of course, ikigai has a lot of positive association with health. And I also learned that, the kind of values that older people talk about that contribute to the ikigai, the sense of achievement, social usefulness, independence that they have, the interdependence, optimism. So there's this older man. When I interviewed him, he was like maybe late 70s. And then his mother is over 100 in a nursing home. So he said, my aim is to outgrow my mother, outlive my mother, so that, and then that was 1990s. Then he said, I believe that human race can live to 120. I want to live to 120. So every day he writes calligraphy. He said, when I'm 100, I want to give all this as presents to my friends. Yeah, so, there are different ways that they show optimism. And part of it, of course, is that they do have examples of people who really grow to very old age in Okinawa. Okay, so in Okinawa, if I know, Japan is a hot traveling place for all of us here in Singapore. And Scoot, I think, already started direct flight to Okinawa now. So if you go to Okinawa, usually you would drive. You have to drive if you want to go to those kind of villages. So one of these villages is called Ogimi Village. It's well known as a longevity village. 1993, they put up this statue and they say that, pronounce that this is their poem. They say that you are still a child at 80. When you turn 90 and the ancestors come to invite you to heaven, tell them to wait till 100. You may consider by then. So that's the that's the kind of optimism, the kind of, the kind of attitude that I think is important in helping Okinawa, especially the Ogimi village elders, to have such a high rate of people who are over 100 and over 90s. Okay, so Ikigai. In fact, so when I was studying Ikigai, I realized that this Ikigai, the Japanese government is very timely to put this Ikigai as a policy. So they have this Ikigai policy since 1972, and to promote social participation, lifelong learning, volunteering, recreation, and so forth. And today, this Ikigai policy still stands, and maybe much more important, in every village, city office. For example, this is a city in Chiba Prefecture. If you go into any of these government websites, they would talk about Ikigai policy, and they say, okay, under it you have old folks clubs, you have the silver office, silver centers, and then also lifelong learning. So it's something that has been with them for a long time in Japan. So it's not unusual when somebody, at 90 is still learning, because there's so much a part of what they understand life to be. So this is a model that talks about the determinants of health and contribution to premature death. And it states that, 10% of health is influenced by healthcare. Christopher may differ. 30% of health by genetics, and 60% influenced by social behavior and environmental factors. So 60% of health is really lifestyle. And you can see that Ikigai creation in this Japanese policy talking about promoting social participation, and what we're doing in Singapore and Active Aging is really about that 60% of lifestyle intervention that would help with health. So when you talk about lifestyle, work, volunteer, learn, play, live, these are important areas of lifestyle for all of us. So given the time, I think I can maybe go until learn and then I'll stop. So, but my slides have until leave. So, so if you want to have my slides, you may. Okay, so work. Last week I met a friend from Japan. He's 70 years old. I know him when I was like in the university. So, but then he already started working as in the JR, Japan Railway Company. So, and then he lost touch for 40 years because he was so busy in his work. He was, raising children. So when we meet up again and he's 70, now he said that he has 6 grandchildren already and he has time for travel. So, because he retired. So he said that he retired from Japan Railway in he worked until 65 and then he got re-employed for like 1 or 2 years. And then he retired. Then he started traveling for a year. So, but when I met him this time, he said, oh, he just passed exam to, he's an engineer. So he said he just passed exam for examining the buildings and railways, infrastructures in Japan. Because infrastructures, buildings in Japan are built for 50 years. So after 50 years, they all have to go through some check to see whether they should be replaced or something. So he's doing that. He got this certification to be able to do this checking. And he said at 70, he's going to start working again because he had enough, playing for 1 year, right? I mean, everybody thinks that you go retire, you retire, you want to go holiday, go travel. How much travel can you do? How much holiday can you do? You have to think of something else. So that was quite interesting to learn from him. So in Japan, if he say he wants to continue working, he has already pension. He doesn't have plan to go back to some professional like he have done. Then this person could have gone to like a silver human resource center that is around in every cities. You have to be just retired from full-time job. And what's most important is you are working not for salary because salary is just so low. It's just lower than the lowest salary, I think. So you have to be working for the purpose of health maintenance and ikigai. Okay, so that's something that's in the policy that the government has worked on, established since 1975. But remember I told you about the 100-year promotion, the office project. So that 2017 to 2018 project, ended up with changes in work for this one. Like they changed the act on the working that employer has to try their best to keep their employees up to age of 70 if they want to. And that they should have obligation to secure employment to age of 65. So Japan is changing in work policies. And more people are thinking or expecting that they will work until 70 or beyond. Okay, which is valid. If you're going to live to 100, if you're going to be healthy, then people wouldn't mind working. But usually after 65, it could be part-time work as well. Okay, and then in the government office, they also have this free employment service, the senior employment support counter. There are a lot of commercial employment services. When you go to the subways in Japan, you look at those flyers they have. A lot of them actually talks about employment. But the problem is job matching, right? Because you're retiring. A lot of these jobs are dominated by menial jobs, like construction, traffic controller, cleaning and security, and so forth. So if you go to Japan to visit, you take a close look, you realize a lot of older people are actually working in all these places. I have a friend who is a professor, retired at 65 from a national university, and then he taught in a private university for another 5 years. So after he retired at 70, he told me his job was like, because for health maintenance. So he wake up very early to go to the hospital and wash the hospital toilets. So every time he would send me pictures of flowers that were put in the toilets, the ladies' toilets and so forth. And he said, oh, he would leave the house very late, before it was bright, and then come home like 9 o'clock before everybody comes in and use the toilet. But that's a professor. Okay, so the second one is volunteer. Volunteer, I did some studies on volunteerism, senior volunteers in Kobe, 7 years after the Kobe earthquake. Kobe earthquake was in 1995. And Kobe earthquake is a very important time point for Japan's volunteerism because that's where they call it the first year of volunteerism in Japan, and they established the nonprofit sector. The NPO sector law was established as a result of the earthquake. So because a lot of people actually flooded, went to Kobe and wanted to help. So there was actually a lot of issues with managing volunteers in Kobe after the earthquake. And I followed the senior groups when they do their volunteer activities and all that. And many of them were seniors who turned from victims. They were earthquake victims. They were living in temporary housing, but they decided to become volunteers and help others in need. So I've written articles about it. So, if you're interested, I can send it to you. But volunteers there are many ways, like time bank is something that some parts of Japan is piloting it. And then there's also the government has quite a lot of policies relating to promoting senior volunteers. So every city will have like a volunteer center, and they will have a lot of materials workshops to support older people who want to be volunteers or who want to set up volunteer groups. So I remember going to the center where you have free machines of copier machines and all that, and meeting spaces you can use so that the seniors can get together and to discuss about what they want to do. Okay, and then this one is an example of senior volunteer overseas program. So overseas program used to be just for young people, but besides young people, they are also having programs especially for senior volunteers overseas. Yeah. Okay, so the third part is learn. As you know, I talked about it just now. Lifelong learning has been very much a part of Japan's life for the older people. So as early as 1949, there was an Act of Adult Learning, and then 1972, there was this concept of lifelong learning adopted. And they also have master plan for promotion of lifelong learning, in which they gave resources to make it happen. So when I interview older people, they always tell me that they have done some, like it's a pattern. After they retire, they will go and go to their community lifelong learning colleges to learn some courses. And a professor from Waseda University who graduated, who retired, also was working in such kind of community center classrooms, classes for older people. And he said the biggest difference he felt was, when he was teaching in a university, students would come in and sit right behind. Students like to sit all the way, very far from the lecturer, and then they would sleep. In Japan, it's quite common that you see students really just sleeping, throughout your class. But the seniors are very different. They will be sitting right in front. They will take up from the first row onwards, and then they are really attentive. Well, maybe because they need, they cannot hear very well, so they want to sit in front. But it was, quite inspiring to hear that. There are many kinds of places for lifelong learning or third-year college. This is a very interesting one. When I first knew it, it was called Kobe Senior College. So they have buildings, and they're very serious. They have 4-year program, 2 years program, that relates to health, relates to gardening, relates to the international understanding and so forth, and also community creation project. So one of the objectives of these students is that they have to think of what they want to do as volunteers after they graduate. So they think they think of I can be volunteering in. So I remember I met this group. They say, oh, we volunteer as to do experiments in hospitals. So we volunteer as subjects, for hospital experiments. So, but there are also some like they started to learn pottery and then set up pottery shops and all that as well. I don't know whether they have coffee barista course, but I think that would be a good one as well. Okay, so in this city, this Kashiwa city in Chiba Prefecture, I went quite recently. They have like the shops like we have normal shops, and then the city used one of the shop space. So this is one of the shop space to become an open space where residents can decide what I want to teach, what I want to lecture, or what I want to engage with the fellow residents. So they have, here you have all kinds of programs and say, okay, this Wednesday, 3 to 5, somebody's doing what and so forth. So when I was there was this, the dentist that's nearby, he decided to teach about good dental health or things like that. So he'll pay a very token sum to book this place, and then people would come who may have it for free, or they may pay like, $3, $4, that kind of thing, and to have the lessons. So I thought that's really interesting, right? To have a space that residents can volunteer and say, I want to teach something to fellow residents. Okay, so something for us, food for thought. Okay, I'm already over, so I'm not going to talk about all these things, but I visited a whole range of living arrangements, community places, and so forth. So I just want to end by saying that, okay, we talk so much about living well, aging longer. In Japan, there's also a group that start to talk about death, because with so many, a high number of older people, you're going to have a high number of death. So Japan, some scholars, some sociologists are calling Japan that they are moving towards a tashi shakai. In kanji, you can see very clearly, society of many deaths. Okay, there'll be more death than birth because the birth rate is going so low. So this concept of dying well is also important as part of 100-year life. Okay, so Ueno Chizuko, a very famous sociologist, talk about dying alone at home in good care. And she's very popular, so a lot of people actually read her works talking about, how to ensure that I can still die at home in good care, although I'm living alone. And then in end-of-life planning, I don't know if you've heard of the word shukatsu. Shukatsu is getting very popular now as an English word as well. Shu means the end, and katsu means activity. So activities on end of life. So what is one of the main activities? The interview showed that, people retire and the first thing they do is, I want to declutter my house. So the danshari, right? The whole concept of how do you declutter your house becomes quite popular. And then in Japan, you also can, go to the bookstores and then you buy endnotes. Endnotes are like books that they will have a lot of detailed things for you to record, so that if something happened to you, people can refer to the endnotes, and it's very detailed, like up to the point like what kind of flowers you want on your coffin. Okay, and then there's also changes in afterlife arrangements in Japan nowadays. In Japan it's very expensive for burial and to keep your tablets, your tombstones with the temple is very, very expensive. So a lot of people are doing away with that. People talk about, having funerals when I'm alive. I want to hear what people say about me. Family funeral, that means a funeral is only for family members to attend. So the family, maybe 5 people, 10 people, they will stay with the body for like overnight, and then next day to go for burial. So there's no visitations at all. So there are all kinds of new initiatives coming up. I have not talked about technology at all, but we all know Japan is so much into digitalization, into technology. And my question is how adequate it is to rely just on technology, especially for matters of the heart. Thank you very much. Just now I was talking with Dr. Christopher, and he talked about Okinawa, some of the, do you want to share? Yeah, so is there any comments, any questions? Sorry, I have to go by 11:30 because I have another talk going on. Yeah.
Could I make a comment? It's got to do also with Karen. But we have cases of people who live long lives, like Lim Ji Bing, the artist. He was only successful at 80, and then he was at 101 when we awarded him the Spirit of Singapore Book Prize. And I was hosting the winning table, but I cannot tell him. And then he rang up. He's got a very good neighbor. His social life is really good. So I asked the neighbor, what's wrong? He must come. And the neighbor said, his son is not very well. I said, how old is his son? Oh, his son is 80 years old. But he is 101. So I said, no, he must come. I will arrange a very good nurse for you together with mobility. So I called Karen, and she arranged for a handicap thing. And I said, you can bring your son along because Halima was a GOH. So he's the winning, Soul of Ink is the winner, $30,000. And he became quite famous for that. And so he agreed, and Karen arrived in her green dress with curls and all. And he was quite happy to come, and he stayed right until the end. And Halima took photograph with him, and it was the height of his life. And for me, it was very important to celebrate a Singaporean who lived to over 100, 101, and he won that prize. He died 2 years ago.
Yes.
This is the person. This is Singapore. We don't need to go to Japan yet. So, and today we have Daniel Teo here. No,
Yeah, so imagine if we have shut someone's life by 80 and say beyond 80 you are, you should just retire, and we would have lose people, excellent artists like Japan. Yeah. Yes. One more question, I was told.
Thank you, Prof. I'm Satvik. I'm a student from NUS College, and I've had the pleasure to work with Fei Wei in the past. Thank you for your talk. You mentioned a lot about how lifelong learning as an ideal is a great model that works for Japan, for this elder people in Japan, and it's tied to their well-being and clearly shows positive outcomes in their well-being. But how does this model not reinforce ableist ideals like having your sense of worth tied to productive aging, or having productivity and independence be inherently linked to aging? Because if that's the case, then people who are frail or not able to contribute productively would be set aside and negatively impacted. So how does the Japanese model prevent that from happening while still having lifelong learning?
Yeah, okay, so in gerontology scholarship, we talk a lot about different kinds of like productive aging is one of the very popular concept, because it is where you feel you show your worth, right, in terms of how you can contribute. And I'm actually quite against it, because I feel that people can be useful in different ways even when they are not called as productive in that sense. So that's why when the health district was set up, and when I joined the health district team, it was called productive aging, and I suggested to change it to purposeful aging, because you could be purposeful. You don't have to to be earning an income to be productive. And in Japan, we talk about volunteerism, right? So there's this word that's called passive volunteer. You could be on the wheelchair, you could be lying on the bed, but you could still be volunteering, because when younger children come to you and they learn from you in different, in the strength perspective, that means you think of what you can give, not what you already have lost. there's actually you can still be the volunteer. So that's how older people are being encouraged to be volunteers in different age. And I also one of my research is actually about intergenerational connections, and I did a year's ethnography in a intergenerational facility in Japan that has childcare and elder care and nursing home. And I'm really impressed with how the old and young could interact and benefit from each other. And just by relationship building that they could have because they're in the same space. Yeah. So, okay, I think I'm asked to stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, A. Prof. Tang, for your meaningful responses. We will proceed with our panel discussion, where our panelists will share practical and cross-sector perspectives on how we can better prepare for an aging society. From addressing current gaps to rethinking how systems, services, and partnerships can support seniors to live longer and live better. I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Ms. Emily Ong, Assistant Executive Director and Head of Department of Social Healthcare at Lions Befrienders, who will be facilitating today's session. Joining her are our distinguished panelists, Ms. Karen Wee, Executive Director at Lions Befrienders Service Association Singapore, Mr. Samuel Tan, Chief Executive Officer of All Saints Home, Associate Professor Tan Boon Yao, Chief Executive Officer of St. Luke's Hospital. Please join me in welcoming our panelist and moderator.
All right. Hi, good morning, everyone. Feeling a bit nervous now because we are overrun. So I'm mindful of the time. So I will do a very quick introduction of our three panelists. So today's topic that we'll be talking about is what must we build today to thrive in a super aging world. So let me introduce our first panelist would be Karen. She is Karen Wee, the Executive Director of Lions Befrienders. So she'll be representing the community social care sector, where she champions high-tech and high-touch. So she focuses on relationships, connections, prioritizing prevention of loneliness over over just medical intervention. She also leads the use of digital tools, not just to replace people, but to create human bridges. Yeah. Then we have Samuel, the CEO of All Saints Home. He represents the long-term institutional care sector. He brings in 30 years of insurance and risk management expertise to nursing home. His leadership has reflected the sector shift towards high level of corporate governance, financial sustainability, and professional risk assessment, which is essential for managing large-scale residential facilities in this very complex environment. And finally, our last panelist, Prof. Tan Boon Yao, CEO of St. Luke's Hospital. He represents the acute to community-based hospital care and, of course, the primary care sector. So he embodies the sector mission to bridge gaps and integrate care across diverse settings in preventive health, and he champions population health approach. He's also an educator by heart. Yeah. So with the different representative of the sector, let's discuss about how can we work on to have a thriving super aged community. So the first question is, Singapore has already, prepared a lot in terms of the super aged. We have talked about such issue many years ago. So being a proud Singaporean, I say being kiasu and kiasi is a very good thing because we have prepared well. But despite now that we are in 2026, which we have projected that we are the super aged society now, do you still see that there are still blind spots that is key to hindering this thriving super aged community? Can we start with Boon Yao? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction as well. Really love what's been shared by the different speakers so far. And I think what the speakers have shared really kind of informs us of what should be done and what can be done in this level of trying to promote an active aging in Singapore. I guess if you look at blind spots, perhaps one area is that as a recipient of many different policies that has been out there right now, and I can say that the last 3 years or 5 years since COVID, things has just accelerated pretty fast, and I think that's really challenging for many of us practicing on the ground as well. And I wonder, perhaps one blind spot is whether there is an overarching strategy looking at how Singapore could age in a way that we want to. I mean, we see strategies at the community level in healthy aging. We see in Age Well Singapore as well. But on the ground, we do kind of experience that everybody has their different ways of trying to implement that, right? So I say that because I give an example. We talk about one care plan, right? So it's a care plan that's supposed to be designed for the person or the patient. So the GPs are supposed to come out with one care plan. The community sector now is supposed to have come out with one care plan. And even the acute hospitals are supposed to come out with one care plan. And the irony is that an individual has more than one care plans, right? And the challenge also is how then do we bring all those care plans together, because the systems are not quite talking. The acute hospitals users were just kind of chatting with Chris just now, this huge, I call epic, kind of epic in many ways in a health record system because it's very expensive. They put their care plans there. But on the ground, the GPs cannot afford that, and they're not able to view their care plans often. In the community, we're still talking about how can we put this together on some system that can track the care plans of the individual. So I wonder, right, at a national level, maybe I'm not, it's beyond my pay grade, I'm not privy to that, but is there an overarching strategy? I mean, I love all that initiatives on the ground that Melissa talks about, but I think somebody up there has to connect the dots and perhaps, share with us a compelling vision or sorts of what we should be doing, and allow that natural kind of different precinct to do that, to meet that goals in a way that would then tide up everything. So I think that perhaps is one little blind spot that we can work on.
Okay, thank you, Bunyao. Seems like the one is not really one for now, but more looking at maybe at the policy level, whether can someone links all the ones together. Yeah, what about Samuel? What's your thoughts?
I'm coming from the long-term care sector. I was very happy to hear Ling Ling talk about dying well. So dying or death is one topic that I think we don't speak enough in our healthcare sector. And perhaps many people feel uncomfortable talking about it. And usually you have discussions about death only when someone is going to die soon. Right? So what I hope we can do more is to engage with people to talk about death. In my nursing home, I feel that we have made a lot of efforts in improving our facilities, environment to make people more comfortable. We have invested in programs to make people more engaged. And we see a lot of such initiatives in Singapore as well. But I find that the care journey is never complete if a person is not prepared for death. Right? So preparing for death is not just about picking up a hobby and having some friends, but you have to have a sense of your destiny, and whatever faith background you come from, whatever social status you have, this is a topic that we need to talk about. So in my nursing home, I'm hoping that we can do more to help our seniors make sense of their past, come to terms with their past, appreciate what they have right now, and then have the confidence to face death. Yeah, so to me, the blind spot is that is a discussion about death.
Okay, thank you. I think when we talk about thriving community, everyone thinks it's about living. But even before the stage that we live, just before the death, actually is a very important conversation. Yeah. So even like last week, I had a close friend, family who's about to die. It was a very sudden death, but the conversation before the death was not happening. So it was only until the last one day, which is very sad that all the family members would need to come. So what is that thriving super aged? I think this is something that we really need to look into. Yeah, thanks, Samuel. Now, finally, we have Karen, to share what's the blind spot in terms of the community care sector.
For me, I feel that ultimately it's about the failure of courage. Why do I say that? From there are 3 parts. One of the blind spot, sub-blind spot, is also about deaf, which is very important. And thanks to Melissa, I was introduced to Arts Walk in 2017. And I remember them distinctively having placed a coffin or mock-up coffin in this town of Yishun for the public to understand and talk about deaf. Talking about deaf is definitely a taboo topic in Asia. However, if you don't plan for deaf, which is what Ling Ling dying well, as well as what Samuel is saying, if you don't plan for it, how are you to ever say that you have lived life truly? Deaf itself is about, if you design for deaf, it's about taking responsibility for yourself. Because while we have ACP, AMD, and the various likes, how many people are signing up? We need to get the policies in place to do it. Then last night I heard from the former secretary to the MOH Malaysia, proudly claiming, hey, our LPA is combined together with our AMD, and we are already on digital. And it's like, you guys are on paper and pencil. I was like, no, we're on digital as well. So separate topic. So what we want to say is that has to be an engaging conversation. And it's very important here, especially as practitioners of the sector. Can we firstly talk about deaf openly and publicly? Secondly, can we celebrate life? So for us, we are very thankful in 2021 or 2020, we had the project of taking photos for the seniors, especially rental blocks. We did that but we didn't tell them taking photos for arbitrary. Yeah? We just said taking photos of them, the best things. We kept one, we gave them one. One in case they passed away, that's it. Another thing is we use the photos for memory books. Memory books too is one, at their wake, if they have, it'll be a celebration of life and not a celebration. It's not about talking about death. But celebration of life, because as you talk about them at death, you are celebrating their memories. The second thing is for them to have this in the nursing homes, etc., as they lose the memory, losing the functionality. When visitors come, it's like not staring at a senior, have you eaten? That's a standard question we all ask when we go to nursing homes as part of the VIA visit. The question asked is, how much do I know about this person? We don't, because they're strangers. But if you have the book and their life story, which we did in 2020 in December, as much as we could, then basically when the visitors come, especially the young students, they have a topic of conversation. So back to the blind spot about the deaf, that's one. The second one is, if you look at today's society, it is built for youth-centric. Nothing wrong, because in society, we are built for optimal speed, for efficiency, for effectiveness. Nothing wrong with that. The question comes when longevity appears and it breaks the norm. That's something that we are concerned. Can our society sustain aging people? How can we redesign society? The third thing I'm asking of, this one I think all of us know, is when we talk about inequality, we don't realize that actually aging compounds it. At age 40, if a person is unemployed, he has less savings, he has poorer networks, etc. But when at 70, his health has declined, he's frail. At 80, he basically dies a lonely death. Now, if we have income, or rather, if we are very advantaged, the reverse happens. Aging will compound the advantages. Question is, you are having a society, not one society, but two. Two tiers of aging, people aging. One, getting worse off. So the gap or the chasm is getting wider. And actually compounds further as time goes by and as we have more super aged, we're actually a super aging society soon. So all these things come is, how are we going to intersect much earlier when the inequalities starts to appear? I know in Singapore education system, we are moving them towards education has breaking the vicious cycle of poverty. But so these are three questions I say, and it's also, so ultimately it comes to the idea of failure of courage. Do we have the courage to change the systems, or we are happy with what we're doing, chugging along, taking instructions and doing what we're doing? So today when we organize this conversations or this conference, our request, Anthony, is shall we not have this as one of the knowledge conference? Because all of us here are sector leaders. you already know the whole sector very well. And actually some of you are even more educated than us. You're gerontologists, I'm not. So the question comes is, can we use today as a platform whereby people who are like-minded, we plant seeds of the future. We plant seeds to change the future. So that was something that we wanted this forum to be. The first forum after 21 years that Harvard Singapore Foundation has sponsored this education of sending people to learn from HBS and come back and to implement it in their own organizations and the non-profits. Okay, so with that, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So Karen has brought out 2 points. One is also about the blind spot being having the ability to talk about death in the community setting. I think where Samuel was, even at the hospital long-term care setting is difficult. What about community? Then the other one is really about inequality. Yeah. So also mindful, because I want to give the floor, the time to ask questions. We have another 10 minutes. So do you have any questions for our different CEOs? Yes, Anthony.
I'm really thankful that you're doing this. But I've been having weekly meetings with my O-level classmates. So everybody is going to this super aging group. And the issue is this, you see. They say, I must ask you this question. They say, we have so many kindergartens, but we have a lot of elderly people. Why can't we have more elder care, day elder care? They want to keep their relationship with the parents and all, but it's a 2 working person in the household, and it's very difficult. So one of the choice they do is they send to the old age home. But can't we have as a policy as good a kindergarten system as elder care? Really elder care. People who are 70, 80, 90, 100. Eh? Where is the policy? What have you done to push that? Because that is a real problem. Thanks.
Can I just share? Is Casey, are you still here? Or you? Okay, Casey, since you are former CEO of AIC, sorry, so you represent the elder care sector. Can we help you ask if you could answer this question? Because you're more high up to the policy than us. Thank you.
No, I'm after everybody. I'm not supposed to be on the panel. Maybe let's hear from the panel members first. I thought it's important to hear from their perspective. Then I can come in to add my perspective as well, really quickly.
Actually, Casey was going to respond to that.
No, Dave, please do. Yeah.
No, so Dr. Cho, you're referring to built facilities that cater to active seniors?
No, they care for elder people.
Well, we already have, so I have my colleague Casey to clarify this. We have senior care centers, and the latest kid on the block is called active aging centers. Well, I'll say that, with active aging centers, the number was 175. It's going to go up beyond 225. Yes. I think the stated intention is to take distance out of the equation. So you're going to have active aging center within walking distance.
We cannot try to jump and say we already have solved the problem. But that's the issue we have with kindergarten. And there's a national policy of kindergarten. Every kid will go to kindergarten. And the government has government kindergarten. So please not do it in an ad hoc 560, you have 120. No. It's because the amount of people that are in this elder area is like 10, 20, 30%. What are you going to do?
Sorry. Because I volunteer in a senior anti-aging center. So in Sembawang, we have 2. We have Blossom Seeds and we have Touch. And we're starting another Touch center. So I know Sembawang population is very big and a lot of seniors there also. I don't see that centers alone as solution to the problem, because I also have friends who are civil ambassadors in Sembawang, and they told me that many seniors refuse to leave their home for the reason, as was stated by some of the speakers, is that they are afraid because they think they are physically not so able, that they will fall or they will have greater pain. And so the civil ambassadors have a hard time trying to convince them to get out of the house, to attend even like my Chinese brush painting where you're just sitting down, painting. So that is a psychological barrier that we are trying to get across in the community. Not that we don't have enough programs. In fact, Touch has started programs with the RNs, exercise program and arts and craft program. All they have to do is just come down their block and attend. But even then, many are not willing to do so.
Yeah, I think thank you for sharing. I think this question about whether are we having enough elder care versus child care, because we're now at the two different spectrum. Of course, by statistics, the childcare numbers are a lot higher. Yes, a lot, 10 times the numbers of elder care. But I think coming back to what our friend here has commented, the question maybe to the panelists is to share, do you think by having more centers is really the answer to elevating and having a thriving super aged community? Maybe we have Bunyao to share.
So I appreciate the question and Anthony in the comments as well. I don't think we lack facility, and I think at the rate that and Casey can verify that we are planning, we're actually going to have a lot of facilities and a lot of elder care centers. My bigger concern is, are we kind of allocating the resource correctly? Because I think we are building everywhere. So acute hospitals are building like there's no tomorrow. There's lots of nursing homes being built as well, and there's a lot of elder care facilities as well. But resources are limited. And how are we going to be shifting the resources to where it's most needed, right? Especially with an aging population and the ones of the older person. I mean, if I reach 70, my needs are going to be very different from the current ones. And how are we going to prepare ourselves for that in the time to come?
Yeah, Anthony, so I need to clarify. I do not know whether just now you were talking about mandatory daycare services, right? No, just daycare. Yeah. Yes.
And we have an aging population. We are catching up with men. You almost beat them.
Yeah.
How are we going to do this?
Yeah. Okay, I think, my hunch, I don't have the stats, but I know some of the community care organizations do have many senior care centers. At All Saints Home, we have 3, they are quite full in terms of daycare. So I think daycare, to me, is a very good option for seniors who need care. Now, daycare is for people who maybe have some mobility issues or maybe dementia and they need help. And that the reason why it's a good option is that in the daytime, they will have transportation to bring them to the centers, and evening bring them back to be with their loved ones. So they still get connected with the families at the same time with society. So I think at the moment we probably have enough. But as just now one of our audience mentioned, the challenge is in encouraging the seniors to attend the senior care center. This is not like a kindergarten or preschool. You just dump the child there. The child has no choice, right? So when you are bringing senior, the senior has a choice, right? So one of the challenges that we are facing right now, and we're working very hard in the community care sector, is to encourage our seniors to socialize. And that's the reason why we have AACs. We have all the KPIs, very challenging KPIs for all of us. Our job is to visit all the, some of these residents to encourage them to come out of their homes. Yep.
Thanks. Karen?
Sharing from the perspective of aging at home, that is the current policy of the country. So meaning to say that whatever we are gearing towards, we have already moved into the ICCP, consolidation of all services by zones. We have 1 million seniors divided into sectioned out according to where they stay, 85 zones. Now, what happened is that we are looking at integration within the zone, meaning that technically we are trying to make sure that we do population health, we do preventive preventive work. So what we are doing now is to make sure everybody stays healthy. We are doing the baseline, which going through the CST.
So for that, we will then ascertain how healthy they are in terms of social, physical, volunteering, as well as communal. There are 5 domains that's currently being used by the Ministry of Health. So what it means is technically the whole mindset is going to change. We have to start somewhere. We have just started the work, perhaps a little bit later, in an organized systematic way since 2018, when the entire elder care section was moved from the MSF family to the MOH. That was the start of the sign of the social as well as the health combination. So now we're looking at social health of a population. So what we're trying to say is that what we are seeing now is that at this point in time, you're looking at all the assets, facilities. But we also agree with our friends here to say that not everybody will come down. And that's intention, because society has evolved. And we should not say as one size fit all. So currently, every one of us in the sector is trying to arrange for a spectrum of services to target to different people so that you capture everybody. There's no such model that can capture 100% in life. Okay, so which means to say the wealthy ones, please keep going to your country clubs, because I don't think our AACs are wealthy enough or have activities can attract them. Okay, so then for the others, what we want is for those who are happy to come down. We have activities for you. Those happy to stay in your flats, we try to get you out. It's difficult to get you out. It's okay, we come to you. But then we don't have enough manpower. So for LB, we use technology. For the others, and also technology as well as neighbors and other volunteers. I'm sure all the AACs, all the SSAs are doing the same. But the question is how much resources? The thirdly is we cannot employ more manpower. This one I'm very particular, because the moment you employ manpower, who's going to pay? People like us, if not your children, if not your grandchildren. We have seniors coming to us, micro jobs. Is the country paying for it? Is the government paying? I say, sure, you want it free, can. Then your kids and your grandkids pay. So what happens when taxation goes up? Okay, you're not just your GST, your taxes. In time to come, we will become like a welfare state. Look at Australia, 40% taxed, right? US, 50% tax. Sorry, I sound like broken record. I've said this many times. So what happens then is, who's going to stay in Singapore when your taxation is so high? The children, the talented children are not going to be here. So who's going to be left? The weaker adults, the old, and the young ones. Which company or MNC is going to invest in Singapore? Singapore is very much driven. How many local industries we have? Yes, 80% of our companies are SMEs. But who generates 80% of the economy is MNCs. So when we this thing, we have talent flight, no investment or lower foreign investment coming. What's going to happen to the state of our country? Is going to decline.
Yeah.
So the question comes, okay, so I end it as a cue.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that means, policies wise, we have to think carefully also.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I think Karen and Samuel and Bunyao have shared a lot about their oh yes. Then Stacey will end.
A quick one from me. Firstly, I mean, my perspective is not what matters or what we think matters to them. It's what matters to our seniors, us included. I mean, that's the question we always ask, right? And if I ask them what matters to them, is it about building more centers? Is it about having all these infrastructures out there? Livelihood answer is no. But I always want to go back to the question, what matters to them? And can we ask them or not? And the needs are indeed going to change. And while we can say that we got enough, I actually think that we are hardly anywhere near there. If we're really talking about empowering our seniors to be able to live well, live with dignity, live with the quality of life that they want, which is what we all want, right? At our stage of our life. Which is first point. Second point is, I do believe very much in terms of supporting them at home, to be aging at home. I do believe in terms of what, for example, Melissa is doing. Community level support, network, social engagement, I believe is the way to go. But how do we create that? How do we replicate what you're doing and scale up? Is the question I was asking myself. Very difficult to do, right? Takes massive effort. And the solution is not to force feed everybody together in the partnership and say you just work together. It doesn't work this way. I've gone through many, many partnerships. And to be able to come together, work together towards common goal takes time, takes effort. So my point is ICCP is not the answer. I'm sorry. I came from AIC, I know. I bore part of the blame for that, but it's not the answer. Sorry, I've got to say this now that I'm out there, right? Thirdly, if I can, let's focus on quality of life, like what Karen said and many of you all said. It's also not just about health. It's about social, it's about mental health, it's about learning, it's about education, it's about work. Absolutely agree with Bunyao. We are not focusing enough Are we serious about all this? Where's the life journey we go through in terms of aging and supporting every part of that? We don't see the shifts in resourcing. I agree. And we are serious, we do need to do this. Social health integration, when I was AIC, we said we'll work on it. I have to say I didn't shift the needle, to be honest. Also, we need to, Michael talked about it. I just want to bring it back to the point. MSF, MOH needs to work together more, right? We don't even see that, let alone the other ministry as much. So I think that's really, really important if you're really serious about driving. Last point, if I can, mindset. We have not quite addressed the issue of mindset. Ageism is all around us. Why does it have to be that you have to prove that you're able to drive? My father is 76. He wants to drive. It is central to him as an identity and purpose. But he complains that he has to go every year to go and check. Of course, we want him to be safe. Now, of course, my instinct is, please don't drive lah. He's not so safe. But it's him, right? So how can we empower them? I see this everywhere. People say you're too old to learn, you're too old to volunteer, you're too weak to do this, right? In our class in judo, where someone who is practicing is 74 years old. And people think that you can't play judo when you're 50 years old. So I point to him and say, that's where I want to be. Also, that mindset had to change. I think it's systemic across the board. So how do we address that as well? Sorry, talk too much.
Okay, thank you, Casey. Yeah, thanks to all of you for making my job very easy. Panel discussion become audience discussion too. Yeah, I hope that there's a lot of rich engagement and exchanges. I think looking at the time now, I will have to close the session, the panel discussion, in something that maybe for all of you to bring back. There's a few key message that was brought here just now. Number one, discussion about death. Okay, this is something whether it's in community setting, hospital setting, institution or not. Are you even willing to talk about it at home? Then the other question is about mindset shift. Are we actually at any time of a point think that our older parents, grandparents or friends who are older should not do this, should not do that? I think if that's the questions that you answer yes and yes, yes. I have a question. Comment.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought, we're talking about how do you, how do you help things actually really at that last mile? Actually, the people who are the massively underutilized maybe or have a lot of potential. Maybe I shouldn't say underutilized, it's not the right word. An underutilized potential is actually the domestic helpers, the caregivers that are immediately, they're employed already. So they're already paid for in a sense too. How do we help to support? And again, it's not a blanket thing because people have different levels of care, but there are people who are ambulant, who just, because I feel more comfortable, my mom has a caregiver kind of thing, right? And my mom can do a bunch of things. But for the ones who are still more active, is there a segment of helpers, domestic helpers? Maybe Harvard Foundation, we can collaborate to do a fellowship for domestic helpers or like capacity building for domestic helpers, right? Why not, right? So that they can become some of the active leaders, in the community themselves. And I totally agree with you. It is mindset. It is mindset change. We just have to think differently. My grandmother was told by my grandfather at 90 that she has to stop driving her sports car, So, I was like, yeah, but it's true. We have to think differently about these kinds of things.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Yep. So really about the mindset shift, reflecting whether are we behaving the way that we didn't want others to behave. And the other thing is one of the drivers is actually our domestic helpers who are at home. Are we empowering them enough to support the aging population to thrive? And I think one of the last key takeaway for myself is really I hope that we have a lot of Melissas around the community, stepping out, sweeping the floor, and then trying to find someone to ask questions, and the community starts building. Yeah. So thankfully, you can go for the tea break and network, but these people are still here. Please feel free to ask questions. Sorry, we have to end the panel discussion now. Thank you.
Thank you.